I'm Sarah Hess. I'm representing the Shell Shock Action Alliance, one of the co-sponsors. Shell Shock is joined by DRAC, the Driving Resource Awareness Council, and the Social Justice Committee of the First Unitarian Society in bringing this exciting program to you tonight. A couple things before we start. First, we know that to stop extreme extraction from fossil fuels, we have to move as quickly as possible to renewable sources of energy. Tonight, the electricity used for this event is offset to 100% wind power donated by Community Energy, a company that sells wind and small hydropower to the grid. According to them, typically 27% of the electricity used to power the lights in this building comes from natural gas. And as you know, most of the rest comes from coal. We have to change this. If you stop at the Community Energy table after the program, which is right inside to the right, you can get information about how you can sign up for New York Wind Energy, delivered through NYSEG using your regular billing system. Second, I want to thank all the volunteers who brought refreshments, set up tables, helped with media, and helped with publicity. And especially to Chris McCarthy for videotaping this and so many important recognition. He's been taking videos of Tony and Jessica for the last 2 days, and this is the third day. And he will be posting them on shellshockmedia.org. So if you run into people and they say, oh, I wish I had heard them, just tell them, check the website, shellshockmedia.org. And in a week or 2 weeks, you should be able to see it there. As I'm sure you know, because I can see your faces and know many of you, our grassroots groups are all volunteer-led and volunteer staffed. Jessica Ernst and Tony and Grafton are donating their time tonight as well, but we could really use your help to pay for the travel expenses of bringing Jessica here. There are donation jars at the table in the back and other jars in the room with refreshments and tabling. So I'd ask you to please give as generously as you can. Okay, now let's begin. Over the years, we've learned a great deal about gas drilling from two reliable sources: scientists and the first-hand stories of people who had their lives changed because they lived near wells. Tonight, we're very proud to present two people who are both scientists who have worked for the gas industry, Dr. Tony Ingraffia and Jessica Ernst. And we're here especially to hear Jessica tell her personal story. She spent years uncovering the truth of Encana's decade of experimenting with fracking in her home community of Rosebud in Alberta, Canada. I'm inspired by her intrepid courage and her fierce determination to tell the truth, as only those who have lived with fracking know it. We'll start this evening with Tony, who will give us some background on how Pennsylvania's shale drilling and the drilling in Alberta, Canada are different in some ways, but in other ways they're very similar. You'll be hearing a lot about methane migration in Jessica's talk. So Tony's going to give us a few basics just so that we'll understand a little more about that. And then Tony will introduce Jessica. And following her talk, they'll both take questions at the end. If you could please hold your questions for both of them until the end, that would be great. We'll close the program at about 9:15 or so. And then, of course, you're invited to join us for refreshments and more conversation. So now, please help me to welcome one of our favorite engineers, Dr. Tony Ingraffia.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My job is to warm up the crowd Dimock, Pennsylvania. Dryden, New York. Rosebud, Alberta, Canada. Who would have heard of these towns if it hadn't been for you know what? So what do they have in common? I'm asking you a question. What do these towns have in common? One word begins with a C. Contamination. Courage. Thank you. These communities have individuals and groups that exhibit unusual courage because they could have done what other individuals and other communities have done, which is to succumb, back off, flee. But in each of these cases, and as we're going to hear tonight from Jessica, people or groups in those communities stood their ground and said, not here, not the way it's happened before. We're going to call people out and the truth will be revealed. So Jessica will tell you her story of the truth and how it has impacted her in her own community. She didn't want much, as you're going to see. She just wanted to live where she wanted to live in a community of 93 out on the plains of Alberta. Contemplative, artistic life, and it has been disturbed. And she'll tell you that story and the ongoing part of the story, which is not over yet. But as Sarah just pointed out, and as you're going to hear, Jessica exhibits that kind of courage that I'm sure everybody in this room has, which is she will never sign a non-disclosure agreement. So she'll tell you why, and you'll judge for yourself what the merits of her case are. So I do need to, as Sarah said, give you a little bit of background on similarities and differences between what you're going to hear tonight from Jessica about the geological setting and the hydrological setting and the methane setting around Rosebud, Alberta, and what exists in Marcellus in Pennsylvania and in New York. So you'll hear Jessica talk about CBM, coal bed methane, which is another form of unconventional gas development, like shale gas or like tight sand gas. It does involve fracking. It usually does not involve the kind of high volume fracking we've come to associate with shale gas, but it's fracking nonetheless. It's usually associated with shallower formations, but not necessarily. And it's usually alone. That is, a company will initially go in and develop natural gas, a mixture of methane and other hydrocarbons, from a coal bed methane formation, but then come back later and realize that, well, if there's coal, there were all the ingredients for the formation of other hydrocarbons, and maybe they're a little bit farther down. So here we are, basic geochemistry. What's natural gas? It's a mixture of mostly methane, but also hydrocarbons, propane, butane, ethane. And how does methane form? So you're going to hear Jessica talk about biogenic natural gas and thermogenic natural gas. And here's a primer on that. You're all Greek scholars, so you know biogenic means produced through biological processes. Thermogenic means produced through thermal processes. In both cases, you have to start with organic material, dead plants and critters, accumulated over hundreds of millions of years, that form the basis for the formation of any hydrocarbon. And depending upon whether that organic material is acted upon by bacteria, i.e. a bioprocess, or acted upon by temperature and pressure, i.e. a thermal process, you get, in the former case, biogenic natural gas, and in the latter, thermogenic natural gas. So biogenic natural gas can form at any layer, at any level, but is most commonly found at relatively shallow depths. I emphasize that biogenic gas can form at any layer, at any level, but it's most commonly formed at relatively shallow depths. Thermogenic gas, because it needs heat and pressure, is more usually formed at lower depths. But those are just guidelines. Mama Nature does what she wants to do, where she wants to do it, how she wants to do it. So it is not true that you will only find biogenic natural gas in coal bed methane, nor is it always true that you will only find thermogenic natural gas in shales. And so the plot thickens. And of course, the gas industry would want us to believe that everything's very simple and black and white. But that's not the way nature works. So you'll hear Jessica talk about how initially her property and properties around her were drilled for CBM, coal bed methane, mostly biogenic. But now those same wells and additional wells are being drilled for deeper biogenic, shallow thermogenic, and deeper thermogenic. So let's remember, this is the end of the fossil fuel era. The easy stuff is gone, but there's still a lot of fossil fuels around, and to get to them, you have to do what you have to do. So you will hear Jessica describe what the industry is having to do to get as much of that biogenic and thermogenic gas as they can from underneath Alberta. So that's a brief introduction to what you're going to hear in much more detail, just to make sure everybody's understanding. Coal bed methane is an unconventional source. Shale is an unconventional source. There's thermogenic gas, there's biogenic gas, and what you're going to hear many times from Jessica tonight is that the industry repeatedly claims and wants us to willingly suspend our disbelief that when underground sources of drinking water, private water wells, are contaminated with methane, whether it be biogenic or thermogenic, it was just a big coincidence. It just happened to happen at about the same time that there was very rapid and very intense drilling. So you will hear this again and again. You've been seeing in the newspapers around here that everybody has methane in their water wells. And the two questions that Jessica will highlight, you'll be able to see them again and again in her talk, are these. When did the methane show up in your well? And at what concentration? And is that concentration related to thermogenic or biogenic gas? And can science prove definitively which it was and which well it came from? That's where the science lies. Jessica is a scientist. She's also an agreed landowner, so she's in the perfect position to talk to you tonight about both sides of the issue. So you've heard enough from me. Maybe a little bit later, Jessica and I will have a little